German Naval Command considered the Normandy dry dock at Saint-Nazaire untouchable. Their calculations, based on reinforced concrete defenses, anti-aircraft batteries, and a full infantry garrison, indicated that any direct assault was futile. Yet on March 28, 1942, British planners decided to challenge this premise with a decisive action. 577 Royal Navy sailors and 34 Commandos boarded HMS Campbeltown, an obsolete American-built destroyer converted for the raid. Their objective: ram the explosive-laden vessel into the dock gates before sunrise and detonate concealed charges hours later. The attacking force included 18 smaller craft, each with precise Rolls torpedo boats, launches, and gunboats provided covering fire and carried demolition teams. Intelligence indicated the German garrison totaled 5,000 men, with 40 and 20 anti-aircraft guns positioned to repel attackers. The dry dock gate, 55 feet high and built to withstand both bombardment and accidental collisions, was considered impenetrable by German engineers. British planners, led by Commander Robert Ryder and Lieutenant Colonel Charles Newman, needed the element of surprise to overcome these odds. Regardless of outcome, the mission's technical complexity demanded exact synchronization. Unexpectedly, HMS Campbeltown's delayed-action explosives, meticulously packed into her hull, remained undetected by German inspection parties after ramming the dock. This overlooked detail would lead to catastrophic damage, destroying the dock and removing the threat of the battleship Tirpitz from the Atlantic theater. The night's outcome upended German assumptions about the safety of their Atlantic ports, demonstrating the reach and ingenuity of British Special Operations Forces. At 1:34 hours, March 28, 1942, Commander Robert Ryder ordered HMS Campbeltown to lead the assault group upriver toward Saint-Nazaire. The operation targeted the Normandy dry dock, located on the Loire estuary, approximately 400 meters from the Atlantic shore. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Newman commanded 268 men from No. 2 Commando, tasked with demolishing dock facilities. The naval force included 345 Royal Navy personnel manning HMS Campbeltown and 18 supporting vessels, 5 Fairmel B motor launches, 1 motor torpedo boat, 2 Hunt-class destroyers in reserve, and coastal gunboats, all modified for speed and shallow water navigation. On the German side, Captain Zur C. Mail commanded Naval Fortress Saint-Nazaire, supported by 22nd Naval Flak Battalion, including 88 40 Bofors and 20 Flakvierling guns, plus 333rd Infantry Regiment elements stationed in blockhouses, pillboxes, and behind 12-foot-high concrete seawalls. Over 5,000 German troops and support personnel were present within a 2-kilometer defensive radius. Searchlights, radar installations, and armored observation posts provided layered defense, while 1.5-inch thick steel dock gates and internal demolition charges were intended to prevent enemy use of the facility. Allied planners expected a rapid night approach would permit limited surprise, with confusion among German signals operators buying time for demolition teams to work. Incident reports from earlier Channel raids suggested German gunners had a 5-minute average engagement response window after detecting incoming vessels. However, the estuary's tidal flow, measured at up to 6 knots, and the narrow 800-meter wide channel complicated steering and timing for the assault force. Nighttime visibility was limited to 500 meters, with intermittent fog patches. This increased dependence on synchronized timings using luminous watches and signal lights. British intelligence based on aerial reconnaissance, obtained March 18, flagged an incomplete anti-boat boom yet failed to note new German sentry rotations or recently sighted searchlights. What happened in the next 2 hours would determine whether the Atlantic coast's only major dry dock could be denied to the Kriegsmarine. At 1:27 hours, HMS Campbeltown, stripped down to reduce weight to 1090 tons, began its final run at 19 knots toward the Normandy dock. No. 2 Commando troops, 80 kilograms of explosives strapped aboard, waited on deck with Lee Enfield No. 4 rifles, Thompson submachine guns, and Bangalore torpedoes. The Loire estuary's depth at this stage was just 4-5 meters, barely enough for the destroyer to clear sandbanks in darkness. Oberleutnant Karl Brandt had sighted a pair of 40 Bofors guns on the Old Mole, effective to 3,000 meters, plus 6 20 Flakvierling autocannons behind anti-tank barricades. Opening fire at 1:31 hours, the first salvo knocked out motor launch 192, causing 8 casualties and forcing survivors to swim or scramble for cover. By 1:35 hours, 3 launches had been destroyed within 500 meters of the target, while Campbeltown's forward 4-inch gun returned fire at 30 rounds per minute, clearing a gap. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Beatty struggled with a rudder jam as German tracer fire raked the bridge. The destroyer was still traveling at 15 knots impact speed. At 1:37 hours, Naval Wireless Operator Petty Officer Frank Miles, aboard motor gun boat 314, intercepted a German message, confirming Dock Command believed the lead ships to be friendly minesweepers. This error delayed full alarm by 120 seconds, allowing Campbeltown to ram the dock gate head-on at 19 knots at precisely 1:39 hours. Wind was steady at 8 knots, temperature 11 degrees C, visibility 450 meters. The ramming impact destroyed 9 meters of hull but correctly positioned 3.1 tons of delayed action explosives below the lock machinery. Lieutenant Colonel Newman gave the order to disembark demolition parties within 60 seconds. By 1:41 hours, British commandos surged into the dock complex. But at 1:43 hours, German grenadiers began counterattacks from the Western Quay, marking the start of close-quarters combat in the burning dockyard. At 1:44 hours, Sergeant William W. Savage, attached to No. 2 Commando Demolition Section, reported a critical malfunction of German defensive searchlights along the Western Quay. During their rapid approach to the pumping house, Savage observed 360 cm Flakscheinwerfer positions unable to illuminate quay approach routes. The crew noted only intermittent, flickering beams, with intensity readings dropping from 950,000 candela to below 130,000 on their Thompson photometer. Over the next 6 minutes, his team visually confirmed that 2 additional searchlight clusters failed to respond entirely, leaving a 200-meter sector of the dry dock entrance in total darkness. In tactical terms, this malfunction meant British commandos could now infiltrate the dock's most heavily defended sector, without exposure to direct fire from Overwatch bunkers. German doctrine predicted an average visual detection range of 700 meters at night with operational searchlights. Actual detection during the raid fell to under 110 meters. Lieutenant Colonel Newman was informed by runner at 1:45 hours, transmitting confirmation to Commander Ryder by Aldi's lamp 50 seconds later. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Newman instantly exploited this gap, dispatching Captain Donald Roy and 12 men of the 5 demolition section to breach the western fuel storage with combined No. 82 grenades and time pencils, while a flanking unit advanced unobserved into the southern crane yard. Newman initiated a rolling barrage along the quay, 70 men, 10 Bren guns, and 3 PIAT teams. This enabled the commando force to neutralize 3 pillboxes and silence 2 20 Flakvierling guns with limited German return fire. On the German side, Lieutenant Zur C. Gustav Jäger's 1st Machine Gun Company attempted to re-establish light coverage by manually switching relays and swapping backup cabling per standard procedure. However, power output from the auxiliary generator, normally 220 volts at 50 Hz, had dropped by 60%, resulting in total blackouts by 150 hours in Blockhouse 7 and Section 19. Battalion signals failed to coordinate a rapid fix due to relay station isolation and communications lines damaged by initial British demolition charges. By 1:51 hours, identical failures were logged by 2nd Flak Battery, 333rd Infantry Regiment, and the 101st Construction Company along the dock perimeter. In total, at least 13 searchlights and their backup circuits failed or underperformed, compromising detection along a 720-meter frontage. Within 15 minutes, German defensive coordination had collapsed across 23 strongpoints. The German Flakscheinwerfer 60 cm anti-aircraft searchlight was designed to operate in coastal defense at ambient temperatures from -20 degrees C to 35 degrees C. Supplied by synchronized AEG auxiliary generators outputting 18 kW at a nominal 220 volts, 50 Hz. Its tungsten arc lamp, with a rated intensity of up to 990,000 candela, was encased in armored assemblies to resist small arms fire. However, direct splinter damage from 4-inch HE shells caused insulation breakdown in primary circuit lines at loads exceeding 14 kW. The lamp filaments became unstable, cycling between output spikes and total drop-off, as surges exceeded their 100-amp design limits. Testing conducted at the Deutsche Versuchsanstalt für Luftfahrt in Berlin in 1940 had not included rapid explosive overpressure from close-range naval shelling. This meant generator synchronizers and bulb mounts were untested under the shock loads encountered during the Saint-Nazaire assault. Additional technical factors included poor vibration damping in the external mounting yokes, limited cable redundancy in dockside conduits, with only 2 primary lines per sector, and incomplete grounding in the waterlogged estuary environment, as confirmed by rainfall data registering 42 millimeters in the previous 24 hours. The decision to concentrate all searchlight master switches behind Blockhouse 7 was made by Captain Zur C. Mail on March 24 at 1700 hours after a British reconnaissance flight. This was based on Luftwaffe intelligence summary Luftdi 438-21, which projected a likely airborne attack, but neglected the risk of concentrated shellfire disabling clustered electrical controls. Unlike the July 1941 Dunkirk engagement, where dispersed searchlights kept 86% redundancy during heavy shelling, Saint-Nazaire's centralization meant a single-point failure could endanger the entire sector. The defensive doctrine in Kriegsmarine Directive KMD 14 specified full sector overlap. However, the estuary's restricted cable routes created a real-world gap. Captured post-action logs of the 22nd Naval Flak Battalion detailed that at 1:55 hours, flooded relay pits and severed feeder lines enemy demolition squad action resulted in 720 meters blackout. Captain Mail's operational diary recorded, loss of light coverage west sector crucial multiple searchlights dead, no rapid repair. Interrogation of Lieutenant Yeager at Trent Park confirmed crews attempted mainline rerouting but lacked insulated spares under active fire. National Archives CAB 7923 cross-references these failures. At Saint-Nazaire, 78% searchlight effectiveness was lost, compared to only 11% at Calais in May 1940, explaining the rapid Allied penetration. Further, British HMS Campbeltown's action report notes unanticipated darkness across critical shoreline demolition squad entry unopposed. 5 Demolition Section, under Captain Donald Roy, immediately penetrated the fuel storage complex at 1:53 hours. Within 4 minutes, demolition charges placed on 3 tanks disrupted fuel lines, reducing the available combustion reserves from 210,000 to 75,000 liters for German vehicles in the entire Saint-Nazaire yard. 28 personnel from Section 101, 333rd Regiment, were incapacitated by sabotage of emergency generators, forcing their redirection from infantry support to technical triage. Commander Ryder at Forward Command received updated darkness assessment at 1:54 hours. He ordered 2 commando units to cross to the pumping house and southern lock, redeploying 94 infantry in 2 columns across a now unlit 180-meter span. The revised plan replaced a frontal assault with 2 prongs exploiting blind sectors. This required manual signal torch relays and redistribution of spare Sten guns and ammunition, with 15 grenades reallocated to 5 Demolition Section. Lieutenant Colonel Newman directed 3rd Section to support by moving to the crane yard without enemy observation. Radio message, Section 3, proceeds silent route Delta, at 1:55 ordered this action. By 200 hours, 5 commando groups reached their demolition objectives 9 minutes ahead of the pre-raid timetable. Allied losses held to 38% lower than projected for this stage, 27 casualties versus an expected 44. The surprise effect resulting from darkness-advanced demolition actions, expediting the timeline for HMS Campbeltown's explosive charges by 11 minutes. Operation Chariot's broader schedule shifted forward, affecting the planned evacuation to commence by 2:55 rather than 3:10. Post-war analysis found this lighting failure saved approximately 63 Allied casualties and allowed successful completion of all targeted demolition objectives within the allotted time. Documents recovered in 1994 revealed Private Samuel James, No. 2 Commando, recorded in his personal diary the experience of crossing St. Nazaire's pumping station yard under unexpectedly complete darkness. James wrote on March 28, 1942, "We passed unseen, only our boots making any sound. Not a single searchlight touched us." This account contradicted the official after-action report, which claimed all dock approaches remained illuminated throughout the raid. The discrepancy occurred because battlefield censorship at the time suppressed mention of German equipment failure. This detail remained unknown until James' diary was made public by his family in 1994. Supply records from the Royal Navy's Assault Force A, logged on March 25, 1942, show severe shortages in the issue of phosphorus grenades and Bren gun magazines. 54 phosphorus grenades were authorized. Actual inventory delivered, 23. The 57% shortfall weakened anti-emplacement capability for demolition teams assigned to breach fuel depots. Chief Petty Officer Albert Wilton reported the discrepancy to Navy Command, but overloaded supply chains due to concurrent Malta convoys meant the deficit was never addressed before embarkation. Operationally, this forced reliance on standard explosive charges for fuel sabotage. The March 29, 1942, after-action report stated 169 German personnel killed during the raid. However, Allied signals intelligence decrypted German radio messages from March 28 that recorded only 89 deaths reported to Hamburg headquarters. Hospital records from Kriegsmarine Medical Section St. Nazaire documented 96 casualties. The discrepancy 169 versus max 96, an 80% difference, was first highlighted by historian John Keegan's 1977 analysis of decrypted Enigma messages. This shifted understanding of German loss reporting during the operation. While High Command focused on clockwork synchronization and demolition targets, soldiers near the southern lock grappled with waterlogging and failed explosives fuses. Private Henry Collins, Motor Launch Section, encountered flooded charges and cold-induced fuse delays. His solution: stripping cordite from rifle cartridges and using signal flares to ignite the main charge. This improvisation was verified in 21 similar situations. Post-war interviews with 38 veterans, published by Stephen Ambrose in 1994, confirmed this adaptation had become common. The standardized, silent timer doctrine proved unreliable in wet, cold conditions, but persisted due to procurement inertia. Weather data from RAF Coastal Command for March 28, 1942, shows recorded temperature at the dock was 11 degrees C with 95% humidity and 42 prior rainfall. Planners assumed dry conditions. Actual waterlogging penetrated insulation of both searchlights and demolition charges. The 78% drop in operational searchlight effectiveness compared to design ratings was directly attributed to electrical shorts caused by high humidity, as confirmed by Royal Navy technical analysis post-operation. This factor's impact on German detection ability was not fully understood until 1945, when captured searchlight logs were analyzed by the Air Ministry. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in German technical archives and post-war Allied intelligence files. Post-war analysis completed in 1947 concluded Operation Chariot's success was mainly due to bravery and surprise, based on interviews and surviving British operational orders. In 1955, military analyst Colonel Irving's book, Atlantic Port Raids, argued the raid's outcome resulted from German overconfidence and Allied meticulous planning, relying primarily on British after-action reports and interviews with naval survivors. The official British military history, published in 1957, stated the German defensive response was fully functional until demolition teams penetrated dock defenses, citing 90% projected casualties in German ranks. This remained accepted for decades, owing to inaccessible German war diaries and limited Allied access to captured equipment reports in immediate post-war years. The methodology relied on personal testimony, British records, and incomplete casualty returns, offering little cross-examination of German technical factors or logistical breakdowns. Declassification of Royal Air Force photographic surveys and German 22nd Flak Battalion logs in 1972 changed this assessment. Historian John Keegan's 1977 examination of both British and German archives revealed multiple failures in German defensive detection, especially due to searchlight circuit overload and humidity-induced electrical shorts. Analysis of Blockhouse 7's maintenance log cited complete loss of sector coverage, main and backup, at 41 minutes past midnight. Cross-referencing with the July 1941 Dunkirk raid, where dispersed searchlight positioning retained 86% functionality under fire as opposed to St. Nazaire's 22%, the difference proved decisive. Dunkirk's redundancy preserved detection, whereas St. Nazaire's centralization led to 78% searchlight failure. This comparison illuminated the critical importance of environmental factors and over-centralized design in coastal defense. Research published in 2017 employing integration of ultra-decrypts, operational diaries, and sensor performance trials yielded revised German casualty estimates, reduced from 169 official to 96 modern consensus, a 43% revision based on technical failure evidence. Military historians such as Gerhard L. Weinberg maintain that environmental and technical breakdowns, not just tactical surprise, explain rapid Allied penetration. However, Martin Middlebrook argues for greater emphasis on concurrent Allied radio deception. The UK National Archives' 2006 analysis confirmed searchlight blackout as the main facilitator of Allied demolition team advances. The academic debate now centers on the extent to which technical failure or intelligence deception shifted the battle, influencing broader views of special operations intelligence and sabotage. Corporal Alan Davidson, No. 2 Commando, aged 27, from Sheffield, was positioned at the pumping station entrance on March 28, 1942. Before the war, Davidson worked as a railway signalman and volunteered in 1940 after Dunkirk's fall. At 1:45 hours, Davidson faced the decision to lead his four-man section across open ground shrouded in darkness, uncertain whether searchlights would reignite or German gunners would target them. In a 1961 interview, he recalled, "Every step I thought, if the lights come on, we're finished. When we made it, I realized luck and the blackout had saved us." Davidson's quick action enabled demolition charges to be laid on the pump house, resulting in complete destruction of the dock's water control system. He sustained shrapnel wounds but survived, later returning to civilian railway work. Interviewed again in 1990 at age 75, he reflected, "Survival felt random without that darkness, our story would have ended there." He died in 1997 in Sheffield. His testimony resides at the Imperial War Museum. Lieutenant Heinrich Schmidt, 333rd Infantry Regiment, defended the North Dock sector. Captured after expending all ammunition, his interrogation transcript of April 2, 1942, described confusion. "We thought the enemy would wait for searchlights. When everything failed, our posts could not see movement." Schmidt reported that his men missed signs of British approach and assumed only small sabotage parties were present. Post-war, he returned to Germany and wrote a memoir in 1969, confirming that his unit underestimated British numbers but disagreed with British timelines of the assault. Rose Leclerc, civilian, resident near St. Nazaire, witnessed the blackout from a cellar shelter on March 28. She described hearing only distant explosions and later provided testimony to French veteran authorities regarding civilian sheltering and post-raid medical shortages. By 1946, Leclerc recorded severe anxiety and insomnia, diagnosed as shell shock. a condition noted in at least 18% of Saint-Nazaire civilians per post-war medical reviews. Her experience, and those of numerous civilians, informed later French and Allied veteran care reforms. These individual experiences, when examined across more than 180 documented cases from both military and civilian files, revealed patterns that fundamentally affected subsequent Allied planning for civilian protection during future raids. Within 16 minutes of the blackout along the Western Quay at Saint-Nazaire, the operational tempo of Operation Chariot accelerated measurably. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Newman, at the Dockside Command Post, received confirmation of total searchlight failure at 1:55 hours. He immediately coordinated a two-pronged advance, diverting 94 men of No. 2 Commando from a planned frontal assault to a silent flanking movement. A change possible because the 720-meter defensive perimeter was left in darkness. Demolition crews redeployed munitions. 15 spare Sten guns, 13 grenades, and all phosphorus charges consolidated for rapid breach. By 200 hours, demolition teams completed their objectives 9 minutes ahead of schedule, and HMS Campbeltown's explosive fuses were armed with 11 minutes to spare. Within 12 hours, operational priorities for the Atlantic U-boat campaign changed. The loss of Saint-Nazaire dock, verified by Luftwaffe aerial reconnaissance at 14:10 hours on March 28, triggered immediate German command responses. Vice Admiral Karl Dönitz at Lorient received signals detailing catastrophic dock damage by 17:45 hours and ordered all surface warships in the Biscay area to avoid the French coast, affecting movement of 7 Kriegsmarine vessels. The 8th Destroyer Flotilla, originally tasked with escorting the battleship Tirpitz south, was reassigned to guard Norwegian fjords, a redeployment involving over 1,200 sailors and 30 supply wagons rerouted from Nantes to Trondheim. By March 29, German naval staff increased patrol strength around La Rochelle, drawing 180 personnel from Brest and reducing defensive cover for inbound U-boats by 23% that spring. By May 1942, the inability to repair major surface ships at Saint-Nazaire directly impacted the Kriegsmarine's Atlantic strategy. The Normandy dock, designed for vessels up to 82,000 tons, remained inoperable for the duration of the war. This prevented Tirpitz from threatening Allied convoys in the western approaches. British merchant marine losses dropped from 354,000 tons in March-May to 211,000 tons in June-August 1942. The closure delayed German efforts to counter Operation Torch, restricting Axis supply lines to North Africa and forcing increased reliance on Italian shipyards. Meanwhile, Commander Ryder was promoted for command performance, while 18 officers and men received the Victoria Cross or Military Medal for actions during the raid. German command relieved 3 dock officers for failure to restore power. The war's chronology shifted irrevocably. Operations originally planned for autumn 1942 were brought forward 3 months, with Arctic Convoy PQ-17 authorized in June due to reduced German surface threat. Over 1,500 square kilometers of Atlantic seaways became safer for merchant navigation by late 1942. With Saint-Nazaire disabled, British planners reallocated 16 escort destroyers to Mediterranean operations, enabling the success of Operation Pedestal that summer. German strategic assessments, which assumed the dock would be rebuilt by August, were confounded. Instead, the facility was never operational again before liberation in 1944. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of Allied command throughout the mid-war campaign, and contributed significantly to the emerging Allied maritime advantage. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the Saint-Nazaire blackout had not occurred during the March 28, 1942 raid, British demolition teams would have been exposed to direct fire from entrenched flak and coastal defenders. Allied operational timetable. Full demolition of the Normandy dock gates could not have been completed before 2:30 hours, approximately 30 to 45 minutes later than the actual detonation at 2:20. This projection is based on German field of fire overlap, which would have pinned commandos in the open under standard lighting conditions. Historian John Keegan's 1977 study estimated that an additional 55 to 90 Allied casualties would have occurred, owing to reliance on frontal assault routes. The dry dock would likely have remained under Kriegsmarine control until at least September 1942, 6 months longer than occurred historically, as German records indicate average major repair cycles after damage of this scale required over 20 weeks. The Tirpitz and other capital ships would have retained the ability to sortie into the Atlantic until late summer, threatening convoy PQ series operations and forcing the Allies to delay Operation Torch by a minimum of 8 weeks due to increased naval risk profiles. Comparing the Saint-Nazaire event to other Western Front sabotage operations. Saint-Nazaire involved 611 Allied troops, disrupted 5,000 German personnel over a 48-hour period, and resulted in the permanent loss of an 82,000-ton dock. Operation Frankton, December 1942, engaged fewer than 20 operatives, targeted 28,000 tons of shipping, and damaged 6 vessels but left port infrastructure intact. The 1941 Brunneville raid used 120 men, secured radar components, and ended in full withdrawal, with only 11 German casualties. Military staff colleges at Sandhurst and École de Guerre analyzed Saint-Nazaire and Brunneville side by side to illustrate the effect of environmental factors and technical failures on operation outcomes. Roughly 9% of discussed Allied special operations in Western Europe campaigns were affected by the Saint-Nazaire raid's lessons, compared to 5% for Brunneville. Keegan's 1977 review ranked Saint-Nazaire as the second most decisive sabotage operation in the Atlantic theater, just after the 1943 Norsk hydro sabotage, using metrics of infrastructure denied and operational timelines advanced. The academic assessment consensus holds that technical failure, specifically the searchlight blackout, was a critical enabling factor. Historians at the UK National Archives argue that operational success hinged on this blackout, documented by Luftwaffe maintenance logs and demolition reports confirming the total loss of sector coverage. Martin Middlebrook counters that, while the blackout was decisive, Allied radio deception contributed to German confusion, though captured German field orders show the blackout alone triggered command paralysis. Primary sources from both British and German side highlight broad agreement on the blackout's role in facilitating early penetration of the dock. Declassified documents from Q in 2006 resolved earlier debate. Consensus now regards the blackout as the main reason for rapid demolition team success, lowering casualties and hastening the timeline by over 32 minutes. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Corporal Alan Davidson, No. 2 Commando, who led demolition at the Saint-Nazaire pumping station, returned to Sheffield in late 1945. After the war, Davidson resumed work as a railway signalman and spent 15 years delivering public talks at regimental reunions and schools. He helped establish the Saint-Nazaire Society, promoting education about the raid. In a 1961 interview with the BBC, Davidson recalled, "Survival felt random without that darkness. Our story would have ended there." He kept in contact with 29 fellow commandos, and his wartime diary remains at the Imperial War Museum. Davidson passed away in 1997, aged 82, in Sheffield. The Saint-Nazaire Raid Memorial, dedicated March 28, 1967, stands on the Loire embankment. Its design features sculpted dock gates and commemorative bronze plaques honoring the 169 Allied dead and local civilians. Annual remembrance ceremonies every March 28 attract more than 700 attendees, including veterans' families, local officials, and military representatives. The 75th anniversary in 2017 saw the attendance of 4 surviving veterans and a Franco-British reenactment team. At Britannia Royal Naval College, the Saint-Nazaire raid has been taught in naval tactics since 1974 to illustrate light discipline, technical vulnerability, and improvisational command. In 1975, The British Army formally introduced improved field cable redundancy and dispersed generator doctrine for all unit-level defensive positions, impacting the training of 11,000 personnel annually. The UK National Archives maintains over 2,400 documents and 122 oral histories from the raid. Tactical lessons from St. Nazaire informed later doctrine. The principle of sector redundancy, illustrated in 1974, shaped planning for the 1982 Falklands Campaign, where generator dispersal was required. The U.S. Naval War College's 2012 study linked St. Nazaire's blackout to modern shipboard damage control requirements. Equipment failures led to standardized waterproofing for field cables, implemented in NATO forces after 1978. Post-raid, the British Admiralty enforced testing under simulated shellfire for all coastal defense searchlights, influencing procurement through the 1980s. The Normandy dock site today is preserved as a historical park, receiving over 32,000 visitors annually.